Good morning. Beautiful photo, Nick. All right. Happy New Year, everybody. Let me make sure everybody has been added to this room. Looks good. And let's start seated. So, finding our way into a seat that feels supportive for the spine. And just letting the spinal column balance. All right. And feeling that balance from the grounded point, the base of the sacrum, all the way through the kind of antenna piece, the head, and settling into that balance. Feel how the positioning itself shifts and adjusts with each cycle of breath. I'll be here for about 45 more seconds. When you feel right, when you feel ready, you can keep the eyes closed here. You can open up whatever feels most comfortable. And we're going to roll the palms down. So the palms can be rested on our thighs so that we have a little bit of extra connection here with the hands. Almost so that the hands can provide some additional stability. And then squeeze the shoulders back just slightly and start to do some circles with the head so that the neck starts to experience some movement here. Now you can move as slowly as you want here, which obviously requires the ability to move as freely and quickly as you want, but I will certainly suggest you err on the side of slowness. Complete one more rotation here, so there's a full rotation. And then we're gonna come back to a neutrally aligned chin. So a lift and an elevation, and reconnect to that stability that the hands are offering. Re-squeeze the shoulders and then let the head fall the other way and do circles at a similar speed in the opposite direction. Really paying attention to those areas of discomfort, dysfunction, and allowing yourself to slow down and feel into those areas and what they might mean. And eventually, we're going to come back to a point. So, completing one more full cycle, we'll come back to a point where we realign the chin the sternum, the pelvic bowl. Keep those hands firmly planted. Keep that shoulder squeeze on and start a little rotation with your torso so that the entirety of the torso moves in one direction as you're moving here in the same way we did with our head and neck movement. Feel into what is happening within the body. Make sure that you find your way into the places, the nooks, the crannies that feel more intensely. Let's speak more clearly. And let's complete one more round in this direction. Eventually making our way back to, once again, a neutral place, and we'll reset by re-elevating, re-engaging the hands, re-engaging the shoulder blades, and then work the opposite direction. So working back now into the direction that probably feels less intuitive, might even require a little more cognition to move in this way. Playing with that engagement of the hands as you move and seeing how that can help to accentuate the communication your body is having with you. And we will allow enough time for one more full rotation here on this second side. We'll eventually find our way back to a vertical spine, neutral chin, neutral gaze. Root the shoulder blades back. Keep that right hand firmly planted and take the left arm straight up towards the ceiling. Fingertips reach up, shoulder blade pulls down. Bend the left elbow, let the left hand come over to the right ear, and then guide the head over to that left side with the left hand. And at the same time, squeeze your right shoulder blade back. Try to keep the tops of the ilium really level with one another and with the floor. Give yourself just another 15 seconds here as you really feel that lateral side of the neck here, right side of the neck expand. Remember that that right hand is an anchoring and lengthening tool as well. And then we'll draw ourselves back up to neutral. Let the left hand reach straight up once again, and then bring that left hand down so that it mirrors the right. Let the eyes close and just feel how the equilibrium of balance is sitting within the body. Note the lateral edge, right side of the neck here, cervical spine length, and just get ready to balance that out. Now the left hand's going to root and anchor us down. Right hand's going to reach straight up. Right elbow bends, comes over towards that left ear, and we guide our head all the way over to the right side, squeezing that left shoulder blade back as we do. Really lengthening out both the lateral edge of the neck, but also the unionization musculature between the torso and the neck itself, between the middle and upper portions of the body. Remember that that left hand can anchor you more deeply, and that anchoring sensation actually helps you create length here. And when you're right, we'll bring the head back to neutral. That right hand was supposed to reach straight back up. And then we'll release that down and squeeze those shoulder blades back. Now lift your head towards the ceiling and just push the bottom of the jaw up into that space. Let the sternum bow forward here so we get a little bit of extension through the spine. And then tuck the chin down to the sternum, let the middle of the back roll back. Squeeze those shoulder blades back as you do. Normally we bring the shoulder blades forward, but we're looking to work on a little more neck space. So squeeze the shoulder blades back as the chin comes down. And then we'll bring ourselves back to neutral. And we're going to transition to hands and knees tabletop. Set into your tabletop space. Soften the sternum down. Feel the humeral heads plug in. And then keep that as you curl your toes and rock back into a delicate down dog. Make sure this is nice and easy on the shoulders. Don't overextend here. Don't let the neck collapse here. Try to keep some neutrality through the torso and cervical spine. And then we will delicately walk ourselves forward and find our way in fold. As we come forward into this fold space, let's inhale into half lift. As we get into that half lift, slide the hands right to the front of the thighs and then push your weight back so that you feel the heels hold equal weight to the toe mound as the top of the head reaches out towards the front of the rim. Now keep that heel toe mound balance as you release yourself back into the fold. Try to get some of that mid back expansion. And then we'll roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae, eventually coming to the point where we stack. And as we stack here, we find our mountain. Let's slide the hands behind us and interlace the fingers at the sacrum. Press down through the knuckles so that you extend the arms out and then squeeze the shoulder blades back just a little more intently here. And lift your chin up towards the ceiling. As you lift the chin, there's a little bit more room for the knuckles to squeeze down. And then relax the chin back to neutral, but keep that knuckle engagement. And then tuck the chin to the sternum. And as the chin tucks to the sternum, there's a little more room for the elbows to squeeze together. Take that. And then keep that elbow squeeze as you bring your head back to neutral. Release the arms and sweep them up and overhead. And exhale through forward fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale all the way back into your fold. Plant your hands, walk yourself back into down dog. Get yourself all the way into the depth of this down dog shape. Press into those index finger mounds, press into those pinky finger mounds. Feel the tailbone reaching and elevating away from you so that you maximize the distance in the spinal column. And then just come down to hands and knees. Think about maintaining that max distance as you flip the tops of the feet and slide back and into child's pose. Slide your left hand to the middle of the mat so that it is in line with your nose, but the arm is extended out in front of you. And then roll your left palm up so that it faces the ceiling. Take your right hand onto your right hip, and then just rotate so that you can gaze over towards that right side of your mat. Right elbow here pointing roughly straight up, left palm pointing straight up. And then relax back to neutral. And we will do this over onto our second side. So right hand comes to the middle of the mat in line with your nose. Right palm faces up. Left hand comes onto the hip. And then we roll so that we can look over to that left side. And then we'll come right back to neutral. Inhale, pull yourself forward to hands and knees, tabletop. Take your left hand underneath the nose here and take your right hand and just start to walk it like spider fingerprints underneath the left arm for a little, thread the needle. Come down here in a way that does not overextend your shoulder. And if you can, keep the palm down on the right hand. If that internal rotation feels like it's too much, you can go to that traditional external rotation. But if we can keep the internal rotation, let's do that. And at the same time, focus on how the soft tissue is integrating and the shoulder is working back into the shoulder socket. We don't do a lot of internal rotation integration, which is why we're making this shape a little bit atypical here, so we can feel into that sensation. And then press into that left hand, draw yourself back up, reposition the hands so that they are even under the shoulders and sink back into child's pose. Fingerprints grip into the mat. We'll pull ourselves back forward into tabletop. Right hand falls underneath the nose here. Left hand walks itself over to the right. And eventually we get to the point where we come down on that left shoulder, staying in the internal rotation if that's possible for our shoulder. And feeling the musculature retract the humerus into the shoulder socket. So we're driving up the integration and feeling into that sensation of the soft tissue stabilizing around that joint. And then we will feel that right hand press us up back into our tabletop, reposition to a traditional alignment, wrist, elbow, shoulder stack, slide back into child's pose. Think about this child's pose as a reset for the shoulder girdle, for the hip girdle. And we'll pull ourselves back forward to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, we're just going to transition into a seat. As you get into your seat, check to ensure that you have your blanket and your ball handy. And get the spine nice and tall. Legs can be bent, they can be extended here. We're going to take a traditional forward fold first. So the forward fold that feels best for you. If that has a lot of flexion in it, great. If it has a lot of neutral extension in it, great. But just take yourself into a forward fold that feels comfortable. The fold here is just a little warm up for the posterior chain. We're going to use that space to access the shoulders once again. And we'll give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. And then we will walk our spine back to vertical. And now we need to bend our knees enough that we can grab the toe mound. So this shape only works if we grab the toe mound. So we may need to be like full knee bend to make this possible. But for some of us, we have a little bit more posterior chain length. You can have some more length, or you'll require some more length. What we want to get to is the point where we can just easily grab the toe mounts, but we have the back musculature kind of loaded so that you feel, okay, that's kind of the end range. And then with the toe mounts and finger mounts interlaced, so you create kind of that little key and lock step right there where they just kind of fit perfectly into one another. We're just going to push the toes away from us. And as the toes push away, we get some of that subscapular musculature to just elongate with the expression of toes forward. And then we can balance that energy by pulling the hands back. So there's roughly equivalent energy in toes forward and hands back. And all of the musculature underneath the scapula is kind of loaded and taking on the burden of holding the shape for us. And we're just going to hold this for another 20 seconds. It's a pretty good amount of work to make this really happen because we are really isometric in the amount of energy pushing towards one another at that connection point. When you're right, when you're ready, back up into a vertical spine. And we are going to, again, having access to that blanket and or towel blanket and ball sock, we're going to roll ourselves onto our back. And you can feel, hopefully you can feel, the amount of work that we had around the scapula in that last little forward full disc shape. Let this next 20 seconds just be about integrating that space that we've created. Eventually, we're going to grab our ball rolled up sock sphere of some kind, and we're going to place that just to the medial edge of the left scapula. So we're going to look to be off the spinal column, but next to the scapula here. So it's a pretty small amount of tissue that we're searching for, aired off the spinal column. So if you're going to be too far in one direction, make sure you're too far to the scapula side. And let's just settle in with the arm falling open into a cactus shape. Now, for some of us, myself included, this shape is going to be pretty darn intense without any movement at all, right? We might not need to do a single thing. You can control a little bit of this pressure here by adjusting how much of your weight is resting in your hips and how much of your weight is resting in your feet. So you can really adjust the amount of sensation you're receiving here by feeling the sacrum or the foot take hold of the positioning. So our goal here is going to be to relax to the point where we can start to move that arm into an extension overhead and then back out into this half cactus shape. Full movement to overhead extension and then back to cactus. Now with all, if the sensation of movement provides too much discomfort, that's a pretty good indicator that we don't need the movement, right? We found the spot and we need to alleviate that sensation until we can get to the point where we can relatively comfortably move. As noted, this is a pretty intense sensation here. And we're going to give ourselves 15 more seconds on this first side. And when you feel complete, we can just roll off that ball, pull that out from underneath us, and come back so that you can feel the comparison left to right. And now our body knows where we're going. So let's head right over to that second side. We're going to take the ball, place it underneath the right side now, between the scapula and the vertebrae. Settle into a spot and then open up into that half cactus. Obviously, you can be in full cactus, but we're really paying attention to the singular side here. So where the left hand is less important, just in a place that allows some comfort. And then our goal is to relax to the point where we can start some movement on this right side so that the arm extends up and overhead and comes back out into our cactus shape. Goal here, again, creating some freedom of that subscapular musculature so that the shoulder capsule itself can be more integrated in daily function. And this just is one of those shapes where you got to work through some discomfort to get to the reward. We have about 15 more seconds here on the second side. And when you're right, we're going to roll off that ball. Let the arms go out into a position of neutrality. Let's reach over and grab our blanket here. And we're going to take blanket or towel, right? So from let's go towel length. So you get to the point where you have kind of a more traditional towel length. So if you have a blanket, it's a shelf fold undone once, and then we're going to roll that. And then we have a relatively dense, but also relatively short roll here. And short as in the height itself off the floor. We're going to take that at roughly a 45-degree angle across the left side of the mat. So you catch just the corner of the mat here. And let's see. Okay, I'll use the rug here as an example. So we're just going to roll right across that corner so that you just catch that. And then we're going to lay down so that the shoulder is just in the middle of that blanket roll, and we open up towards cactus again. So now you have this tail, and you can tuck that so that it goes to a 90-degree and goes directly under the neck, or you can just push that out of the way and let the head come to the floor. But don't be half on the blanket, half not, so the head's tilted. We want the cervical spine to be neutral. So either push that out of the way, or we take that and we just tuck it underneath the neck so that we have a little neck support. What we're looking here is to add some accentuation to what we just did, freeing up that posterior chain and using that space that we've created in the posterior chain to now fall open across the anterior and get some anterior space across the front of that shoulder. So trying to mirror the openness on the front and back side of the shoulder here. And thank you all so much for figuring that out. That was not a good descriptor by me. So you guys are the freaking best. And we're just feeling across that anterior soft tissue. This is going to be pec minor, a little bit of pec major into that stabilization musculature of the shoulder and the unionization between the arm and the torso. And we're going to give ourselves 15 more seconds here. And when it feels right, we'll pull that blanket out from side one. Relax back into a cactus shape so you can feel some of the asymmetry across the anterior of the shoulder girdle. And then when you feel ready, when you feel right, we'll move right over to side two. So we go 45-degree angle across kind of the corner of the mat. We take the shoulder structure just over that so that it lays over. We can release the right arm now into this sensation of anterior openness. And we just relax into the breath as that unionization tissue receives this additional act. So there's this little boy who has become very interested in meditation, and meditations around altars specifically. And this fascination grows into a lifestyle as he ages. As he ages, he also starts a tech company that becomes incredibly successful. And he ends up making more money than he can spend, or at least it seems. And so as a young man, he has considerable wealth and opportunity and access to anything he wants. Last 10 seconds here. When you're right, when you're ready, we're gonna pull that blanket out from underneath the right side and go back into that cactus space. And then bring your elbows and palms together so that we're kind of at heart center, like prayer hands, elbows squeezed. And then pull the elbows down towards the belly button. Thumbs come towards the chin, maybe towards the throat, depending on your shoulder capacity. And then exhale, keep the elbows and the palms together and extend your hands up and overhead. And then relax your arms back out towards cactus, but now you're at the height that you were with your shoulders. So we don't draw back down, but the elbows stay at where they were able to get in that extension overhead. And you're likely going to land in a place where you have a little bit of sensation in that pec minor back into that shoulder structure. And that's, again, what we're looking for here. Now a little bilateral expansion. I guess technically that would be unilateral expansion. And then keep the elbows where they are. So we're a little higher than we were the first time. And we're gonna bring the elbows and the palms together. And then squeeze the elbows down towards the belly button. Load that musculature, feel the top of the shoulders start to pull. And then exhale and take the arms up and overhead. And hopefully we get just a little bit further this time into the shape. And then you're gonna open your arms up, elbows stay at the same height. So now we're at another modified version of cactus. And then relax your hands down by your side, palms up here. And we want the shoulders to just relax into this space. And then we're gonna bring the knees to a bent position. The bottoms of the feet, they're gonna come together and the knees are gonna fall out wide. So we're looking for medial line expansion in the hip, but this is really just an opportunity for the shoulders to relax. Think about the thumbs relaxing down towards the floor so that the pinky side of the hands starts to relax up. It's not a forced lift, but it starts to relax up as the thumb side of the hand starts to relax down. So there's a little encouraged relaxation into external rotation. And we're going to give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. So hips should be supported here. You can slide your hands underneath the thighs. Try as you might not to make that happen. Ideally, we can keep the shoulders relaxing into this external rotation. And then we'll bring the knees back up to neutral. Take the arms back to heart center. And then we're going to go an eagle wrap. So we're going to take the left hand closest to our torso and then bring the backs of the hands together. So we have a cross here of the hands. And then if you can go for that full wrap so that the palms come together. But we can just go backs of hands, right? So it can be backs of hands or it can be full wrap, but the left arm is closest to us. And then we are going to bend the knees so that the feet can come on the mat if they're not there. And start to rotate the knees towards the right. And as you do that, just squeeze the shoulders over towards the left. You're not going to get a ton of rotation out of the shoulders here. And then bring the knees back to neutral, arms back to neutral. And then same thing, knees to the right, shoulders to the left. And come back to neutral and relax your arms out to cactus. Just settle into that. That's a lot of work. And then we'll do the same thing second side. So hands come together, then the right arm is closest to the body, backs of the hands come together. Or maybe we go for the full wrap. Knees are bent. If they're not, if we've lost that knee bend. And then the knees are going to fall towards the left as the arms squeeze towards the right. And we come back to neutral. And one more time, knees fall towards the left as the arms squeeze towards the right. And we come back to neutral and open the arms up towards cactus. Let's take our blanket roll down so we don't need to change the depth of the roll at all. We're going to slide that underneath the neck. And we want the back of the head to come down on the floor. And then the arms are going to be underneath the blanket. So we don't have the arms lifted here. Arms are on the floor. And we're just going to rest in this cactus pose. And smooth into the breath. Really think about the elbows relaxing, the shoulders relaxing. The pinky edge of the hand is now relaxing. And so this man with this incredible wealth has really no wants. There's one thing he has always wanted. And since he was a little kid, he has had this desire to meet with this specific guru. And she is incredibly elusive. And he has sent out kind of his assistants to find a way to connect these two. And he said, any amount of money, it does not matter. If she wants $1 million, we'll give her $1 million. And so obviously the assistants are like, well, we're not going to pay this woman $1 million. So they go out, they reach out to her. Her response is no. They start offering more and more money, right? It's $50,000. And she's like, no. Eventually it gets to $1 million. And, even gurus have needs for funding. And she says, okay, for $1 million, he can meet with me and he can ask me one question. And that one question will be responded to with a one-word answer. That is my last and final offer. And the assistants go back and they're like, we did not get a good response from her. It's going to be $1 million. You're going to get to ask her one question and she's going to respond with a one-word answer. I don't think this is a good idea. He says, Let's do it. When can we do it? Last 45 seconds here. Think about the neck relaxing, the shoulders relaxing, the pinky edge of the hands relaxing. We're right. We're ready. We're going to slide that blanket out from underneath our neck so the back of the head can come back down firmly onto our mat. And we will bend the knees if we've lost that knee bend or if we've removed that knee bend. And then we will push into the toe mounds and heels, lift our belt line up into a bridge and slide the hands underneath us. Interlace the fingers here below the tailbone. And think about walking the shoulder blades a little closer together here. And then squeeze the shoulder blades down and think about the edges of the shoulders squeezing out. And then relax the hands, release the grip, release the tailbone. And take the arms back to cactus and let the knees start to rock side to side. Eventually, we're going to let the knees fall over to the left side. And then as we do this, we're going to have an option. So you can stay right here in cactus. You can also take your right palm down and tuck it underneath the small of the back so that you go into internal rotation with the right shoulder. So it would look like this. This is completely optional though, right? If the shoulder doesn't feel like it's going to benefit from this, or you don't feel like this is going to be beneficial, just stay in the traditional twist. If you want to continue into some of this internal shoulder expansion, this is an option to do such a thing. So this date and time of the meeting is arranged, and this man gets a helicopter ride up to the top of this mountain where this woman lives. He goes in and he meets with her, and she's completely silent. She hands him a cup of tea, as you do. And he sits and he thinks, and he's not 100% sure the question he's going to ask. He's been thinking about this, ruminating on this for months now, and he still doesn't have 100% answer. But after some amount of silence, he begins to ask the question. He starts out by explaining how successful he's been. And she's just looking dead at him, eyes not moving, not blinking. And he starts saying how he's, from a little boy, been practicing these meditations in front of these altars. And he asks, eventually, within this meandering start to a question, he asks, what is it about his life that has made him so successful? Eventually, he finishes that meandering question. And she looks back at him. And she says one word: karma. When you're right, the knees are going to return back to neutral. And then if you have your arm tucked, the arm is going to return back to neutral as well. And then we will go right into our lateral sway, rocking those knees side to side. Eventually, the knees are going to fall over to the second side, the right side. And then you have this same opportunity here. You can take that left hand and you can tuck it underneath you if you want some internal rotation, or you can stay in this more traditional twist. So this man gets this one word answer, karma, and he's actually quite pleased with it. He feels like it's a validation of the life he's been living and the work he's been doing. And he goes back to his normal office life. And the very next day, the stock market changes. And his wealth starts to rapidly decrease. The share price of his company starts to dramatically drop. And the net assets that he held start to rapidly dissipate. And there's panic in the boardroom, but he's calm and peaceful. He goes home that night and he sits down in front of his altar and he spends an extra hour and a half in meditation in front of the altar. And the next day, the shares crash more. Panic. But he goes home calm, peacefully. He sits in front of the altar. And he adds 3 hours. And for the next month, things get worse and progressively worse. And he takes a leave from the company so that he can work on his karma, so that he can pray and meditate more. Last 10 seconds here on this second side. We'll bring our knees back to neutral. And we will once again just find balance across the shoulder girdle. Push into the toe mounds and heels. Lift yourself into a little resetting bridge here. At the top of the bridge, feel free to move and explore. As the torso shifts, note how the shoulders respond to those shifts. And then eventually, we're just going to release our tailbone back down to the mat. Let our eyes close and our awareness drift within us and ask ourselves if there's anything we might want or need before Shavasana. And if there is anything, let's offer it. And if there's not, if you're already prepped, if you're already ready, just relax and release yourself into a Shavasana that feels really good. And so he has taken this leave so that he can work on his karma, right? Karma is the thing that brought him the success. Karma is the thing that will bring the success back. So he's spending more time meditating, more time praying. But the share price keeps falling. His wealth keeps falling. For too long, the once vast sums, the seemingly infinite amounts of resources he had, are down to nearly nothing. His assistants are all gone. And he reaches out to the people around this guru that he once spoke to, begging to speak to her again to see what's going wrong. He tells her, he tells her people, the last time it was $1 million. This time I have no money, but I will earn this money again. And when I do, I will pay her. And he gets word back from her immediately. No money necessary. You can come see me anytime. When you're right, when you're ready, completely relaxing, releasing into the shape. So he hikes up this mountain, no helicopter ride this time, and gets up to the top. He meets with her. He's given a cup of tea, and he starts explaining how his fortunes, not just his financial fortunes, his life fortunes, have changed dramatically. And how it happened right after he met with her, and how she had given him the response of it is karma that has made all these good things happen. And he asked her if she remembers that, and she just stares back blankly. And he continues on. He says, I have been working tirelessly for a year to exclude any negative karma that could possibly be coming into my life. Start to move your fingers and your toes. He says, I am meditating and praying 24 hours a day, basically, at this point. I can't figure out what's wrong. And her expression changes, and it goes from blank to an obvious sadness. Movement into your wrists and your ankles, into your elbows and your knees. Shoulders and hips, neck and head. Eventually, we're going to bring enough movement into our body that we can transition from the shape we are in back into a seat. In this seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes closed. She looks at him with this obvious expression of sadness, and she says, "Oh, you poor silly man. Karma means action. It was your actions that made you who you were." With our next inhale, we'll bring our hands together, heart center. As you burst forth into 2023, can you ensure that your actions are creating the karmic expression that you want? And see how that changes your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy 2023, guys. So freaking nice to see so many of you here. Thanks for recharging with me. Appreciate the heck out of you. I'll be back tomorrow night if you want to move. If not, we'll do this next Sunday. Love the heck out of you. Mwah.
Thank you.
Thank you.